Weed is not just a substance, it's a threshold, a portal ancient cultures didn't just tolerate, they respected it. From shamans to mystics, they didn't use it to escape, they used it to see, not to get high, but to get clear. Because here's the truth, weed doesn't give you anything, it shows you what was already there. Beneath the noise, beneath the programming, beneath the version of you you've been rehearsing. And whether it's sacred or toxic has nothing to do with the plant and everything to do with your frequency when you meet it. Because in the end, weed doesn't open the door. You do. But once it's open, the question isn't, what did I see? It's deeper. What was blocking me from seeing this all along? Long before dispensaries, laws, or recreational labels, this plant was sacred. In India, it was linked to Shiva, the destroyer of illusion. Sadhus would smoke it not to escape the world, but to pierce it, to see what lies beneath Maya, the cosmic illusion. In ancient China, Taoist alchemists used it to access inner dimensions, to explore the landscape of the soul when the senses no longer filtered truth. In Africa and the Americas, tribes sat in circle, fire lit, not to get stoned, but to get still, to connect, to listen to the subtle voices of the unseen. Because cannabis isn't just a plant, it's an amplifier, a frequency magnifier. It turns the dial up on your thoughts, on your emotions, on your intuition, on your shadow. And that's why not everyone can handle it. Because when you amplify the signal, you also amplify the distortion. That's why the ancients had ritual, intention, ceremony. They weren't getting high, they were lowering the volume on the noise so they could rise into the clarity. Because the plant itself doesn't decide what you see, your state of consciousness does. Used without reverence, it can numb. Used without purpose, it can distract. But used with presence, with awareness, it becomes a mirror, a frequency gate, a soft unlock into what the Hermeticists called the inner fire that purifies the mind. Ever wonder why two people can smoke the same strain and have completely opposite experiences? One feels bliss, expansion, insight. The other spirals into anxiety, paranoia, or complete shutdown. It's not about the THC. It's not even about dosage. It's about frequency. Weed doesn't inject anything into you. It amplifies what's already running beneath the surface. If your energy is fragmented, it reveals that chaos. If your thoughts are racing, it turns up the volume. If your body holds unresolved trauma, it shows you every edge of it. It doesn't make you feel bad. It just stops you from numbing what was always there. This is why the plant is misunderstood. Because people seek it for pleasure, but what it often brings is truth. Not because it punishes, because it reflects. Your experience is a mirror of your state, and that means the work isn't in the substance. The work is in your alignment. Used with reverence, weed can amplify meditation, deepen introspection, dissolve identity layers, accelerate emotional integration, reconnect you to the field beyond the mind. But only if your intention is clear, your energy is grounded, and your system is ready to receive. So before asking, what strain should I use? Ask this instead. What am I inviting this plant to show me? And am I truly ready to see it? Because this isn't about getting high, it's about getting honest. Subscribe and hit the bell, because what we're about to explore next will redefine how you use this plant forever. The subconscious is not buried. It's broadcasted through every decision you don't question, every thought you mistake for truth, every emotion you never pause to feel. And when you take cannabis into your system, you're not just altering your perception, you're lowering the firewall between conscious and unconscious mind. Weed softens the ego's grip, not to destroy it, but to reveal what it's been protecting. That's why things bubble up. Random memories, childhood wounds, creative visions, existential questions. Because you're no longer filtered. You're accessing the raw operating system of your own consciousness. This is why some people feel lost on weed, not because the plant is too strong, but because their subconscious has never had room to speak. When you're high, what normally hides comes forward. And if you're grounded, you can meet it. You can witness it without reaction. You can integrate what you normally suppress. That's where the magic lives, not in escapism, but in the confrontation of inner noise with presence. Because cannabis doesn't just alter your chemistry, it alters your relationship with thought. It slows you down enough to notice, that belief isn't mine. That fear has been on loop. That emotion was never fully felt. That voice in my head isn't me. And in that awareness, something sacred happens. You don't just see your mind, you step behind it. You become the witness, the field, the awareness that was always there, but too muffled to hear. This is the gift of weed when used with wisdom. It doesn't create enlightenment. It removes distraction long enough for you to remember. You were never asleep. You were just too busy to notice you were dreaming. There's a lie hidden in the conscious community. A quiet, well-dressed lie that says, if you use weed often, you must be more spiritual. Or worse, the more you smoke, the more awakened you are. But let's be clear, spiritual depth isn't measured in how often you use a plant. It's measured in how deeply you integrate what it shows you. Because weed doesn't evolve you, you evolve through what you choose to do with what it reveals. You can smoke every day and still avoid your shadow, still bypass your healing, still chase the high instead of embodying the truth. And you can use it once a year and have it rewire your relationship with existence. It's not the frequency, it's the presence. It's how you enter the space, how you breathe when the insight comes, how honest you're willing to be when the plant holds up the mirror and asks, will you look or will you run? You can't fake frequency. You either match the lesson or you numb it. And this is where many lose the path. They confuse altered states with actual transformation. But insight isn't integration. Real change doesn't happen in the high. It happens after, in the days that follow, in the choices you make, in the silence you keep when your old self wants to scream. That's when the plant becomes medicine. Because the true spiritual use of cannabis isn't in the moment of use, but in the days you don't need it to access your center. That's when it's no longer a crutch. It's become what it was always meant to be, a temporary key to a door that was always yours to open. Every tool has two sides. The blade that liberates can also bind you. Weed is no exception. What begins as expansion, insight, peace, deep reflection, can quietly become dependence, not physical, energetic, because cannabis doesn't just alter your state, it can replace your inner discipline, if you let it. Used too often without intention, it becomes the spiritual equivalent of scrolling social media, numbing instead of feeling, escaping instead of facing, observing instead of embodying. You tell yourself, I'm more creative when I'm high. I think deeper. I feel more connected. But soon, you can't sit with yourself sober. You can't hear intuition without assistance. You can't reach presence without a puff. That's when the plant stops being sacred and becomes a substitute for self-trust. And this is the trap, because it still feels good. It still gives you glimpses. It still mimics depth. But it's not real clarity if you can't hold it without the crutch. It's not real integration if it dies the moment the high fades. You know you've gone too far when you need it just to feel normal. You can't meditate without it. You avoid emotion unless you're elevated. You confuse stimulation with evolution. This isn't judgment. This is discernment. Because cannabis will never say no. It will meet you as often as you call it. But it will also reflect back every bypass you try to spiritualize. That's the danger, and also the gift. Because once you realize the high isn't the point, presence is, you stop chasing the plant and start becoming the field it was trying to lead you into all along. And when you reach that place on your own, clear, grounded, alert, whole, that's when the relationship shifts. The plant bows to your frequency, not the other way around. The plant is alive, not like an animal, but like a frequency. It holds an intelligence that doesn't speak in words, but in vibration. And when you sit with it, you're not consuming a substance, you're entering a dialogue. The question is, are you listening or are you obeying? Because here's the subtle shift that defines everything. The plant was never meant to lead you, it was meant to mirror you. You are not a follower, you are the field. The consciousness that either uses the mirror to awaken or uses it to delay responsibility. Many talk about connecting with plant spirits. Few ask, am I showing up as an equal or giving away my sovereignty in exchange for sensation? True spiritual work doesn't worship the tool. It honors it, then transcends it. You don't stare into the mirror forever. You look just long enough to see what you've been ignoring, and then you move. You apply, you shift, you walk the lesson into your breath, your choices, your presence, without needing the mirror to keep you there. That's when the relationship becomes sacred. Not addiction, not dependency, but ceremony. You don't reach for the plant to escape life. You reach for it to see life more clearly. And eventually you stop reaching altogether because the clarity is now inside you. And the plant, like any great teacher, smiles quietly from a distance, watching you walk the path on your own. Not because it abandoned you, but because you finally embodied what it came to show. The final truth isn't about cannabis. It's about you. The plant was never the power. You were. It didn't open new realms. It helped you quiet the noise so you could hear what was already whispering within. And once you've touched that truth, even once, you realize something profound. You don't need the key when you remember you were always the door. The peace you felt, it was always yours. The clarity, the insight, the silence between thoughts, they weren't given to you by the plant. They were revealed. Like light behind a veil you finally chose to lift. So you stop asking, should I keep using it? You start asking, do I still need help remembering who I am? And when the answer is no, that's not rejection, that's graduation. Because the point was never to depend. The point was to realign, to meet your own presence with such honesty that the smoke becomes irrelevant. You become lucid without assistance, clear without chemicals, anchored without external anchors. You become the field, the frequency, the teacher. And that's the end of the myth. The last video you'll ever need about weed and spirituality isn't the one that tells you what to use. It's the one that reminds you, you are what you've been trying to access. You are the altered state. You are the sacred substance. So here's your final integration. What truth has the plant been trying to show you that you're now ready to remember on your own? Drop it in the comments. Because someone out there is still searching in smoke for the light that's already living in them. And your answer might just spark their awakening.